Mother-in-law criticized our small apartment and said, "You'll never make it here." So I sent her real estate listings for retirement homes. She didn't find it funny. When I first met Marvella, my now mother-in-law, I thought she was just one of those overly opinionated, strong-willed women who like to have the last word. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. She was polite enough on the surface, but her words always had a sharp edge, like she was trying to cut you without drawing blood. I'd smile and nod through her thinly veiled comments, brushing them off as harmless. "Rance, my husband, told me not to take it personally. That's just how she is," he'd say. But after years of being on the receiving end of her judgmental attitude, I wasn't so sure. Rance and I moved to New York City not long after we got married. We didn't have much money, and honestly, the city scared me at first. Everything was loud, fast, and expensive. But Rance loved it. He'd always dreamed of living here, and even though I was nervous, I wanted to support him. We found a small one-bedroom apartment in Queens. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. I took pride in decorating it with thrift store finds and small personal touches. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like home. Marvella wasn't impressed. She had never liked the idea of us moving to the city. She called it a death trap and said it was no place for a young couple to start their lives. Still, she decided to visit us. I should have known that nothing good would come of it. When she arrived, I could tell right away that she wasn't thrilled. She walked in, looked around, and let out a long sigh. "Well, this is charming," she said, in the most uncharming tone possible. She started inspecting the place immediately, running her fingers along the counters like she was looking for dust. I could feel the judgment radiating off her. The first thing she commented on was the size. "It's so compact," she said, wrinkling her nose. "How do you manage in here?" I smiled tightly. "We make it work." "Humph," she said, clearly unconvinced. She poked her head into the kitchen and laughed. "This isn't a kitchen. This is a corner with appliances." Rance tried to defuse the situation by showing her the view from our window. It wasn't much, just a park across the street, but we liked it. She didn't. "How depressing," she said. "Who wants to look at dead trees and joggers all day?" I bit my tongue. Rance gave me a look that said, "Don't start anything." But I was already starting to simmer. This was our home. We worked hard for it, and she had the nerve to act like it wasn't good enough. The entire visit was like that. She criticized everything. The bathroom was too small, the furniture was cheap, and the neighborhood was sketchy. She even made a comment about our bed, asking how we managed to sleep in something so cramped. I tried to stay polite, but by the second day, I was over it. Then came the moment that pushed me past my breaking point. We were eating dinner, takeout from a local Chinese place because I hadn't had time to cook, and she took a sip of her wine, the one she'd brought herself because she didn't trust our taste in wine. She set her glass down, looked at me and Rance, and said, "You know, I don't mean to be rude, but you'll never make it here. This city isn't for people like you. It's too hard. You're just not cut out for it." I felt like I'd been slapped. Rance tried to laugh it off, but I could tell he was uncomfortable. "Come on, Mom, we're doing fine," he said. "Fine?" she repeated, raising an eyebrow. "This isn't fine, Rance. This is barely scraping by. You're living like college students. It's embarrassing." I excused myself to the bathroom before I said something I'd regret. I stood in front of the mirror, gripping the sink, my mind racing. Who was she to judge us? We weren't rich, but we were happy. We had each other. That was supposed to be enough. But her words stuck with me, like a splinter I couldn't pull out. She thought we were failures. She thought we'd never make it. And worst of all, she had the audacity to say it to our faces. I walked back out, determined to get through the rest of her visit without losing my temper. But as I sat there, listening to her go on about how much better her house was, an idea started to form in my head. If Marvella thought our apartment was so inadequate, maybe I should help her find a new place. Somewhere she could feel more comfortable. The next morning, while she was out at a spa appointment, her idea, of course, I sat down at my laptop and started searching for retirement homes in her area. Not just any retirement homes, though. I was looking for the kind that would make her squirm. The kind with shared bathrooms, no frills, and a strict schedule. It wasn't hard to find a few that fit the bill. I spent the next hour crafting a cheerful email with all the listings attached. The subject line read, "Some options for you." In the body of the email, I wrote, "Hi Marvella. Since you seem to have such strong opinions about living spaces, I thought you might appreciate these retirement home options. They seem like a great fit for someone with your discerning tastes. Best. Tasha." When I hit send, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and guilt. I knew it was petty, but after years of her constant criticisms, I couldn't help myself. I wasn't sure what her reaction would be, but I didn't have to wait long to find out. When she came back from her spa day, she was in a good mood, at least until she checked her email. I was in the kitchen when I heard her gasp. "What is this?" she demanded, storming into the living room with her phone in hand. I turned around, feigning innocence. "What's what?" "This email," she said, waving her phone at me. "Retirement homes? Are you serious?" I shrugged. "You've been so vocal about how unsatisfactory our apartment is. I just thought I'd return the favor and help you find a living space that meets your standards." Her face turned red. "This is outrageous. I don't need a retirement home." "Of course not," I said, smiling sweetly. "But it's always good to plan ahead." She was furious. Rance tried to play peacemaker, but it was no use. Marvella spent the rest of her visit sulking, and I could tell she was dying to say something more but didn't want to give me the satisfaction. I, on the other hand, felt like I'd finally won a small victory. I don't know what's going to happen the next time we see her, but one thing's for sure, she won't be visiting us in our microscopic apartment again anytime soon. Marvella's visit ended on a cold note. She left without saying much beyond a clipped goodbye, and Rance gave me a long look once the door closed. "Did you really have to send her those emails?" he asked, half laughing, half serious. "Did you really have to let her trash our lives for 3 days straight?" I shot back. He didn't argue. He knew as well as I did that Marvella had crossed a line. Maybe my response wasn't the most mature, but I wasn't going to let her insult slide anymore. I thought that might be the end of it. I underestimated her. The next strike. A week later, Rance got a phone call. I knew it was Marvella from the way he pinched the bridge of his nose and sighed. He walked out of the room, but I could still hear parts of the conversation. "She's impossible, Mom. You know that." "No, we're not moving back. We're happy here." "Well, you don't have to visit if you hate it so much." When he hung up, he flopped onto the couch with a groan. "She thinks you were out of line," he said, rubbing his temples. "And now she's decided to make it her mission to prove we're failing." "What does that even mean?" I asked. "She's sending us emails with real estate listings in Connecticut. Huge houses, yards, suburban life. You know, the whole escape the city fantasy." The emails started coming daily. Marvella didn't just send links, she included long messages about how much better our lives would be if we left New York. She threw in little jabs about how a real home doesn't have neighbors above and below you, or how a proper kitchen has counter space. It was relentless. At first, I ignored her, but after the 10th email, I realized she wasn't going to stop. If she wanted a fight, fine. I wasn't going to lose. The perfect revenge plan. Marvella's Achilles heel was her image. She cared deeply about how people saw her, especially her friends. She loved showing off her perfectly curated suburban life, the big house, the garden she never actually tended, the spotless kitchen she barely used. She thrived on being the woman everyone admired. I decided to hit her where it hurt. If she thought our small apartment was embarrassing, I'd show her what real humiliation felt like. First, I took screenshots of the emails she'd been sending. Then, I wrote a long, detailed post for a private Facebook group called Suburban Gossip Watch. It was a group for locals in Marvella's town, and it was full of chatty, nosy people who thrived on drama. I posted the screenshots alongside a message that read, "Hi everyone. Just wanted to share something wild. My mother-in-law has been sending me emails criticizing our life in the city and telling us to move back to Connecticut. She even sent these real estate listings, saying we'd never make it here. I'm trying to stay polite, but it's hard when she's so openly judgmental about our choices. Any advice on dealing with family like this?" The post exploded. Within hours, there were dozens of comments. Some people sympathized, but most were shocked by how rude Marvella was. A few even recognized her from her profile picture and started sharing stories about their own experiences with her. "She's always been a snob," one woman wrote. "She once told me my garden looked unprofessional." "Who says that?" "I had her at my dinner party last year," another chimed in. "She brought her own dessert because she didn't think mine would be up to par." The group turned into a roasting session. By the next day, Marvella's reputation was in shreds. Word spread fast in small towns, and people started talking. I didn't feel guilty. She'd spent years tearing people down, it was about time someone stood up to her. When Marvella found out, she was furious. She called Rance, demanding that I take the post down. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" she screamed. "People are treating me like a joke." Rance held the phone away from his ear and gave me a look. "Mom, maybe this is a sign you should back off," he said. "Back off? She's ruining my reputation." Marvella shrieked. "Do you think I deserve this?" Rance finally snapped. "Do you think we deserved all the things you've said about us? You've been pushing us around for years, Mom. Maybe if you'd been a little kinder, this wouldn't have happened." He hung up on her, something he'd never done before. I could tell it wasn't easy for him, but it needed to be done. After that, Marvella stopped calling. She stopped emailing. She even stopped visiting. A few months later, Rance and I finally moved out of our tiny apartment, not because of Marvella, but because we'd saved up enough for a slightly bigger place. We stayed in New York, and our new apartment felt like a fresh start. No more judgment, no more criticism. Just us, living the life we wanted. As for Marvella, she stayed in her big house in Connecticut, but things were never the same for her. People in her town started treating her differently, not as impressed by her perfectly curated image. She'd overplayed her hand, and now she was paying the price. I don't know if she'll ever apologize. Part of me thinks she's too proud to admit she was wrong. But I don't need her apology. Knowing that I stood up for myself, and that she finally faced the consequences of her actions, is enough for me. Sometimes, revenge doesn't have to be loud or dramatic. Sometimes, it's just about turning the tables and letting people see someone for who they really are. Marvella always thought she was better than everyone else. Now, she has to live with the fact that no one else agrees.